What's happening, guys? Kenny here again, and today I've got another On My Mind video. And what I'll be talking about today is why I love tool steels. That's right. And also chameleons, steels that are somewhat like tool steels, like when the way they sharpen and the way they take an edge, but they're not considered tool steels. They're more like stainless steels and stuff like that. Now, in saying that, I want to quickly describe what tool steels are. Tool steels are technically, obviously by the name, a steel designated or designed to be used in tools. So whether it be a tool that's cutting plastic all day or a tool that cutting, saws and wood all day or something like that, it's a steel that's made to be used in tools. So in saying that, there's a lot of tool steels out there. I'm not going to discuss all of them today. There's a lot of simple ones that go back a long time, like A1 and W1 and all these other ones. The one we're most acquainted with is D2 because they started using this in a lot of production folders. But there's a lot of other ones like that, like D2, that have been around for a longer time, but we don't hear as much about. They're used by a lot of custom makers back when I was a kid and stuff in the 80s and 90s. Early 2000s. Since then, we've had a lot of stuff like M4 and stuff like that come along. I mean, M4 is an old steel too, but like 20CV and stuff like that, they've started making more stainless steels that can act like those, and they are used in tooling now and used in a lot of like plastic industry and stuff like that. Now, in saying that, I'm going to go into why I love tool steels and what brought this on, which was the other day I was sharpening this knife. This is the Ray Laconico Keen mass drop collaboration. This is S35VN, which is not a tool steel, guys, but it is a stainless steel. It has, I think 1.5 carbon. I'm actually gonna bring up my knife steel app just to make sure I'm not giving you guys false information. Okay, yeah, so we're looking at about 1.34 carbon, 0.4 tungsten, 3% vanadium, which is a good amount of vanadium in there, 14% chromium, 2% molybdenum. I'm not gonna go all the way through all the elements, but yeah, it's got a lot of carbon, a lot of carbide formation in there. So yeah, this is a good steel, but it's more like a stainless steel. I was sharpening this the other day, and it came up really fine. Came up nice and, really crisp edge. It's hair shaving, nice, easily hair shaving. Very slicey on the paper, like you can curl it really tight. Really tight curls, and it'll grab that edge real easily. So really sharp edge, not hair whittling. I took it all the way. I did go all the way through the process. It was like I started with 300 because this is Banner 24/7's knife. He already reprofiled it pretty nicely, so all I had to do was pretty much line it up, make sure I was hitting his edge. Went with 300 all the way through to 1500. I went a little finer with the edge on this one because it is lower carbide. And I went ahead and stropped it with 3 micron, would not whittle hair. I went to 1 micron on leather, still will not whittle hair, but very, very sharp. Then right after I sharpened that knife, I sharpened this knife, guys. Yeah, that's right. This is the Shaman, the Blade HQ M4 natural jade micarta scale shaman, however you want to say it. So this knife, when I sharpened this one, pretty much went through the same process. I started this one with 140 because it was the factory edge, and had to do some work on this primary. The primary grind was not that great, so I had to do some work on the secondary bevel, some reprofiling. So yeah, I went 140, 300, 600, 1500, I ended on 600 because this is a higher carbide than S35 M4. So I went to 1500, stropped it on 3 micron, whittling right after 3 micron, and oh my gosh, was it sticky. Just like, I mean, you don't want to touch the edge. It feels like it's going to cut you. That's why I love tool steel. That's why guys who sharpen love tool steel, because it takes such a fine edge, guys. And what we're going to talk about here, I want to talk about the difference between people talk about toughness, okay? That's why people use steels like M4 and like Rex 45, for instance. Rex 45 and M4 are very similar in composition, and they're made for their toughness. But toughness meaning edge stability, guys. Toughness, when people talk about toughness, when we talk about like 1095 toughness, we are talking about plasticity in the sense of how far can I bend this before it snaps or stays bent. If it bend it and it goes back, that's toughness, guys. Toughness is like, I'm gonna stick this under something and pry. How much can that take? That's toughness, guys. When we talk about toughness in pocket knives, most of the time we're talking about edge stability. How much can the edge take before it deforms, before it rolls or chips? So can I take this and slam it into a cutting board 4 times and have the edge roll or chip? That's the edge stability, the toughness we are talking about with steels like M4 or Rex 45. Rex 45 is pretty much the same composition as M4, but with higher cobalt. Now, cobalt is known for being, for one, it makes the steel more capable of going to a higher HRC. It also makes it possible to work the steel after a heat treat with less, there's just less of a possibility of damaging your heat treat, of overheating the steel. So cobalt does a lot for Rex 45 because now they can take this to, this one was at I think 66.5 HRC, whereas this is going to be more around that 62 to 64 range. So that's why Rex 45 is better than M4 in a sense, because you can take it to a higher HRC, which means higher edge stability and probably edge retention, or what we would pretty much have to call wear resistance. Probably higher in that sense as well, but M4 might be tougher. Like if I wanted to try and pry something, M4 might be a little tougher in that sense. So higher HRC can't, for us in the knife world, it means higher edge stability, not higher toughness in a sense. Okay, I'm gonna kind of ramble there. But something, guys, we have a lot of, like I was saying, there's a lot of tool steels that go far back, like D2. When I was young, D2 was like a, it was like a premium steel, guys. Only custom knife makers really used it, or really high-end folders. It's like, D2 was like, oh, this unattainable steel when I was a kid, in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. Well, early 2000s became more readily available. But D2 now is being used more readily all across the world in a lot of different applications. And so it's more readily available. So now they're taking D2 and putting it in a bunch of different folders, Chinese folders, and just a lot of knives across the world. And it's so easily attainable and cheap that they're putting it in cheap knives like this. When I say cheap, I mean price-wise, not necessarily manufacturing-wise. So these are only like $42 and you're getting D2 steel. That would have been unimaginable when I was young. So D2, the problem with D2, and the reason that we've talked about this, Steve, Super Steel Steve, guys, a channel you got to go check out. He talks about, he's great, knowledgeable dude that knows a lot about steels. He can explain what's going on with a lot of steels and edge stability and all these things we talk about. So Steve and I were talking about this, about how we've had this conversation in our in our chat channel, chat room. D2 has a temperature variance of 50 degrees where that has to come out of the oven. 50 degrees, guys. Something like Cruware, I think he was saying, had like 200 degrees variation, still going to be fine as far as austenitizing and tempering and all that. 50 degrees, guys, why are we using this in production steel and production knives? I mean, they're probably heat treating 100 blades at a time, or I don't know, 50 blades at a time with this. How are you going to get the back blade out at the same time as the front blade? And 50 degrees could probably change just by opening the door of the oven room. So that's too small of a variance for a steel that I feel like should be used in a production knife. That's why AUS 8 and some of these other steels seem like better options. Even 9CR and stuff like that seem like better options than D2 for a production, like a you know, like a high production type of knife, like something like this. So that's where, like, why are we using so much D2? I think it's because guys like me, we look at D2 as premium, you know, although now we're finding out if it's not heat treated properly, it's not premium anymore, guys, really. If D2 was heat treated properly into like 62 HRC, this could be insane, guys. This could be really good stuff. At 63, it would be nuts. I mean, if it's done properly, D2 can be amazing. So I don't think it should necessarily not be used, but maybe only used if it's going to be done properly, just like M390 and these other ones. Now, I'm already rambling a bit. So now moving forward, I want to talk about steels that are like chameleons. They're going to be a stainless steel, but they take an edge, or they feel like a tool steel when you're sharpening them, and they take that apex so fine, and they take they're gonna apex and have edge stability like a tool steel in a sense. And the steels I'm talking about today are steels like 20CV. This is the ZT0562 Tiger Stripe. Again, CPM 20CV, which also you're talking M390, 204P are in the same family, analogs, and they are technically stainless steels. We'll get more into that in a second, but they take that super high sharpness, super keen edge, and they have really good edge stability. So that's why I'm talking about that. And then ZDP 189 is another one. This is a Spyderco Delica 2 and ZDP 189. Another steel that's technically not a tool steel but works excellently. And it takes super, super fine edge. I just sharpened this yesterday, guys, and I was like, oh, I'm adding this in because you could see a little bit of mirror there. Yeah, it did take a nice keen edge, and it was hair whittling. 1500, 3 micron strop, hair whittling. Just like 20CV does for me. It's usually pretty hair whittling after the first drop. So, yeah, just steels that kind of act like a tool steel, but are not technically tool steels. Now, in saying that, another one, LMAX, guys. LMAX is another steel, using it in that little Spidey Chef, no, not Spidey Chef, I'm sorry, the little Lion Spy, the one I used from Elliot. That knife took a screaming edge right off the stones. I think like one strop, and it was already hair whittling. But in saying that, like M390, LMAX, all these, they're like chameleons. They act like tool steels, and they're used in tooling, but they're not technically tool steels. So like M390 is like 1.9 carbon, I think, and like 20% chromium. It's 4% vanadium, so it does have a lot of carbide formation. You know, kind of like a tool steel. It's making a lot of carbide formation, but there's 20% chromium, guys. So it's technically going to have more stain resistance. Now, a lot of that chromium, because of the high carbide count, like ZDP has 3% carbon. So with having 3% carbon, a lot of that's going to get caught up in the carbide formation. So because there's so much carbon and so much chromium, the chromium's going to get caught up in carbide formation. So it's not going to necessarily be as stainless as people say. And I think I was going to talk to Elliot Williamson from Fairham Forge about this more in the Q&A, which I hope still happens. We haven't talked a lot more about it. But yeah, so carbon count versus chromium count has a lot to do with whether these steels are really stainless. We all talk about stainless steel, but is it stainless really? If all the carbon's being used in if all the chromium's being used in carbide formation and there's not as much free, then it's not going to be as stainless as people think it is. So when people are saying like, oh, 20CV and M390 are the best, they're stainless steels, but they're just as good at edge stability, it's not necessarily true, guys. These are going to corrode. Just like ZDP 189, I've heard people say, oh, this got spots right away. It's because all that carbon is getting caught up in the chromium, and it's not forming as much. It's not leaving as much chromium free for corrosion resistance. So that's why you're getting, like people. I don't think people understand that as much, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. So they do, however, take an extremely keen edge, and it's the fine grain structure that's going on because of the high carbon count and all the carbide formation and the way that just the way they've set it up, the way that the steel is, the composition of the steel is set up to have a very fine carbide formation and just be extremely like edge stable, essentially. So, whew. Got a mouthful here. In saying that, that's why I brought this up, is because I wanted to talk about those steels that kind of take an edge, like tool steels, but this is why tool steels are so loved by guys that sharpen. This is why M4 is such a popular steel with guys that sharpen their own knives or love a very keen edge. And it holds it for a long time, guys. So that's why I love M4 so much. And Rex 45 is just a beast of M4. Essentially, as long as you're not going to be doing stupid stuff with your knife. Crewware is another one that's just like, wow, if you guys saw my toughness test, Crewware is a great tool steel, and it sharpens way easier than all these other ones I'm talking about. It's almost like a magic steel, where it sharpens like a normal stainless steel, but it even sharpens easier than D2 in my experience. This feels glassier on the stones than the Crewware. The Crewware sharpened like, it almost felt like 14C28N or something. Like, it sharpens so easily. And then another one, guys, Maximate. Yeah, the king of tool steels. And this is, this is like, it's on another level. You almost can't even call it steel. It's almost like it cuts steel. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's another thing. These are all these tool steels are created for a certain application, and they have better, they specialize in certain applications. Just like D2 has, I think like 12 to 14% chromium. So it's going to be better at being stain resistant, whereas something like M4 only has like 4% chromium. So you can see they're utilizing different aspects of their element makeup. So that's just the way they've formed the steels for different applications. And in saying that, 20CV is one of those that you have to keep, or 20CV or M390 or any 204P, any of the analogs. It's made for that same type of thing. It's made for the application in the plastic industries where you have corrosion resistance is something you need to worry about. But they're still taking care of their tooling, guys. So this is not perfectly stainless, guys. This is all theory in a sense. I'm not like a metallurgist. I'm not someone who's necessarily testing the stain resistance right now. I'm not taking 204P and 440C and testing them. I think Pete might have already done that from Cedric and Ada. But in saying that, it's not as stain resistant, I think, as some people would think. Or I think depending on the heat treat, guys, because like I was saying before in an old video, the way that WE does their S35, or I mean their 20CV, their 20CV is going to be, or their M390 is not going to be as stain resistant as maybe another company's M390, because they try to utilize more of the edge retention and stability more than the stainlessness. So that's the other thing, is you can take your steel to a different, by heat treating it differently, you can utilize different things in the steel. So another thing we have to remember, we get it's just like Banner 24/7. Steve talks about this a lot. You have a composition of a steel. The way you heat treat it is going to tell you what that steel is going to be better for. Whether it's edge retention, edge stability, wear resistance is with the edge. Jesus Christ. Edge stability, wear resistance, and corrosion resistance. Okay, so those three things, it's gonna tell you which one it's the best at by the way they heat treat it. Now, I do believe that. I mean, I love tool steels because I take care of them. Right. I'm gonna put. I use EDCI on a lot of my knives these days because it doesn't really leave a residue. I'm not affiliated with them. I don't get anything from them, so it's just something I use personally. I use it. I like it. Also, Benchmade, the cleaner lube, I use that. It leaves a nice residue though, but it's protecting the knife. Also, Frog lube, I use that when I'm storing a knife. I'll leave a nice thick residue on it. So, yeah, these are some of the lubrications I use, and I don't really worry. I take care of my knives, so I'm not really worried too much about spotting and stuff like that. I'm not worried about rust. So that's why I love tool steels, and the edge they take, the edge stability, that toughness, that edge stability it's great. It's amazing, and it takes such a keen edge. I love it. That's why I love tool steels. And anything that acts like a tool steel, ZDP 189, I am really digging this stuff. It acts like a tool steel, but it's more stainless. It is a beast, and it holds an edge forever. So I did sharpen this guy, even though the factory edge was still sharp. I just wanted to sharpen ZDP, and the wife's out of town this weekend, or was out of town this weekend, so I could sharpen up all my knives, which I had to catch up and sharpen a lot of knives. So that's what I've been doing. But these tool steels, guys, crew wear, if you saw my toughness test, amazing. This thing performed amazing. Also, when I compared it to K390, K390 is another tool steel I absolutely love. K390 chipped more than the crew wear, but it would have better edge stability. It would not edge stability. It would have better edge retention or wear resistance. It would have better wear resistance than the crew wear. But crew wear was tough as nails, guys. This stuff performed excellently in my toughness test. The S110, guys. S110 is another one that I would kind of put on this list because it does take an extremely fine edge because of the high hardness. 62 HRC. Is what my PM2 was at in my toughness test that you guys saw. Now, this guy, the 20CV, if these companies take it to 62, we would see a whole nother level of being like on that tool steel level. I feel like at 62, 63 HRC, we would be seeing, I would come off that the 1500 grit diamond stone, and it would just be hair whittling right away, probably. That burr would come right off. It would just, it would slice so amazingly right out of the bat. And at 3 micron strop, and this thing would be insane. I know if they did this to a higher HRC, we would be seeing what 20CV and M390 and 204P are really capable of. Because I don't think we're seeing that right now, guys. We see a lot of companies just kind of doing a basic heat treat on knives on a steel that really needs more precision heat treating. When you're talking S30, S35, they're still a fine heat treat. It's still a fine heat treat protocol, but this is like on another level. If we're gonna be using 20CV and M390, let's go to that next level with it. Let's take it to that where it needs to be to actually be that much better than something like S35 or S30. Yeah, so anyways, I've rambled enough. I'm sure I missed something. I did do 2 takes, so hopefully the other one I can kind of bring them together and use both. Maybe I can edit this. I might just leave it full, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm sure I missed something, but I did want to talk about this because I think it's important to understand what the difference is and why we choose tool steels over stainless steels in some cases, and why some people choose stainless. Obviously, where you live is important. I live at the beach, guys. I live in California, Southern California, near the beach, so I deal with corrosion as much as most people. I'm not in boats and stuff like that. I'm not in the ocean, like necessarily using my knife as much as some people like that maybe work on a boat, like a fisherman or something. But it's in the air. I have a lot of humidity at times. I just take care of my knives, and that's it. You know, I use corrosion, you know, products, something like EDCI or Frog Lube. I use those products in order to keep the corrosion down. That's it. It's not. I don't see it as something that would make me not want to use the steel just because it gets corrosion. But you know, that's different strokes for different folks, guys. I love tool steels, and not everyone's going to. Most people would probably hedge on the stainlessness over edge retention or keenness of edge. So M390 kind of, you know, brings everything together, but they're just not taking it to the level that makes me want it so much more. If they did 62, guys, I'd be all over that shit. I would love it. And I think everyone would. Except for the guys that can't sharpen. Then you'd be bummed because you would have a really hard time sharpening. It's going to be harder. It's going to be harder to... You got to hold that edge, you know. So, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for your subs, your comments. If you like this video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up and maybe a sub. If not, go on your merry way. We'll go our separate ways. But hey, thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate all you. Have a great day.